Committee on Education Policy.
Thank you, Chair Kimbell, and welcome. Will the Committee on Educational Policy please come to order? It is now time for the committees to consider today's consent agenda. The consent agenda includes only the minutes of the May 2020 committee meeting. Does any committee member wish to remove the item from the consent agenda? Seeing and hearing none, is there any objection to the approval of the consent agenda? Again, hearing and seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. Item 2 of the discussion agenda is an action item regarding the amendments to Title V regarding residency reclassification, financial independence. The item will be presented by Lauren J. Blanchard, Executive Vice Chancellor for Academic Student Affairs, and by Ray Murillo, Director of Student Programs. Dr. Blanchard, please begin.
Thank you so much, Chair Fong. In May, you may recall that we presented to you an information item regarding recommended amendments to Title V that would expand the criteria considered in the review of residency reclassification. Specifically, the proposed changes would create greater alignment with existing financial aid definitions and equip us to better serve our students who are in greatest need. Active military, former foster youth, and unaccompanied youth who are homeless or at risk or who are at risk of homelessness are just some of the vulnerable populations that we believe will benefit from these amendments. I will now ask Ray Murillo, Director of Student Programs for Student Affairs and Enrollment Management, to discuss this item in more detail with us now. Mr. Murillo?
Thank you, Dr. Blanchard. In accordance with the California Education Code and CSU policy, the campus determines an applicant's residency at the time of admission. This determination is for tuition purposes only. The initial classification of residency requires that a student meet the requirements of physical presence in California and an intent to remain in California. A student who does not demonstrate both physical presence and intent to is classified as a non-resident. If determined as a non-resident, the student may apply to the campus for reclassification. To qualify, the student must demonstrate a physical presence and intent to remain in California, as well as financial independence. Determining financial independence is necessarily only when a student requests a reclassification. To meet the financial independence requirement, a student must not fall in any of the following categories in the calendar year of the application and in any of the 3 calendar years prior. Claimed as an exemption for state and federal tax purposes by a parent or legal guardian, received more than $750 per year in financial assistance from a parent or legal guardian, or lived in the home of a parent or legal guardian for more than 6 weeks. Current language in Title V treats lack of financial independence as an automatic disqualifier for non-resident student seeking reclassification. Unfortunately, this has resulted in the denial of reclassification for CSU students with compelling arguments deserving of consideration. Since July 2019, we have had a total of 769 reclassification requests from 19 reporting CSU campuses. Of those, a little more than half, or 412, were granted. The main reason attributed to the denial was the failure to meet the financial independence requirement. The proposed amendments put forth to you today delineate the circumstances where financial independence shall not be considered in a reclassification analysis. The following proposed criteria in which financial independence shall not be considered in a reclassification analysis. As shared earlier by Dr. Blanchard, the majority of these categories are now in alignment with existing categories that qualify a student as independent as articulated by financial aid. Specifically, this change would include the following student populations: dependent students with a parent who has resided in California for more than 1 year, those enrolled in a graduate or post-baccalaureate program, a student who is 24 years of age by the residence determination date, or a student who is married or has a registered domestic partner as of the residence determination date. This change would also include the additional student population such as veterans in active duty military, a student with a legal dependent other than a spouse or domestic partner, former foster youth, ward of the court, or for whom both parents are deceased, a student who is an emancipated minor, or a student determined to be an unaccompanied youth who is homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. Again, all other requirements for residency reclassification would need to be satisfied by the students. The proposed amendments would simply identify circumstances in which failure to meet the financial independence requirement would not result in an automatic denial of the reclassification. I will now turn back to Executive Vice Chancellor Blanchard for his closing comments.
Thank you so much, Ray. These Title V amendments are presented to you today for board action. And while the numbers impacted are relatively small in comparison to our overall student population, there is a face and a future behind each request for reclassification. So we ask that you join us in standing behind our students in these unique situations and help to make their CSU degree completion dreams a reality. Chair Fong, this concludes our presentation. And at this time, Ray Murillo, Dr. Lolo Hong, who is our Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and Enrollment Management, and I welcome any questions the board may have.
Thank you so much to the both of you for the presentation. Because this item involves amending a provision of Title V of the California Code of Regulations, these proceedings are deemed to be a public hearing under the provisions of the California Education Code. During the 45-day notice period for this action item, no written comments were received by the Chancellor's Office staff in relation to the official posting of this amendment. And other than any comments received during the public comment period at the beginning of the meeting today, which will be part of the official record, no one has requested to speak to the committee during this hearing. The public hearing is now closed. The recommended amendments to Title V regarding residency reclassification, financial independence, is an action item before the Committee on Educational Policy. Before we proceed to any questions or discussion, may I ask for a preliminary motion to approve these changes? And trustees, please be sure to unmute your audio and please identify yourself if you speak.
Becca Eisen, so moved.
So I recognize Romy Sebelius.
This is Trustee Zabalius, Committee Chair Fong. I move the approval of the proposed Title V change as outlined in the agenda.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. We have a second. At this time, are there any questions or discussions from the board on this item? So Trustee Eisen, do you have questions?
I have a question about the COVID-19 situation where some of our students who would otherwise be in California on campus are now in a situation where they may be even out of state living with their parents as they get through this period of time. Do these residency requirements, do they change at all the status of a student who finds themselves in that situation?
So the changes in themselves do not address some of the situations that are occurring because of COVID-19. However, we are in consultation with the Office of General Counsel to seek some guidance that would in fact help students who are being impacted by COVID-19. So for example, there's two quick examples that we are looking at. Many students, because we moved to a virtual environment did in fact move back home because of housing being closed by our recommendation and health concerns and so forth. So they wouldn't necessarily, they could run into issues with the 6 weeks living at home. So we're seeking some leniency to how to implement that. The other situation that we're trying to address as well is for our incoming students coming in for fall 2020, where many of them will start their education career in a virtual format, where they otherwise probably would have moved near or on campus from an out-of-state residence, but now they may just stay at home out of safety and concern in our recommendation to take the online courses. So that impact would be, when does the actual intent to stay start? So that's where we're looking for some leniency as well, because it's not the control of the students when they move to California. It has a much bigger impact because of the pandemic, and we don't want to just push back that initial date of move because of the pandemic. But again, we're still seeking some guidance from General Counsel to see, because much of what I'm talking about are regs that are in the education code. So we need to see how and if we have some leniency to make some exceptions.
Thank you. Trustee Adamson.
It's just an informational question. Ray, when was the last time the $750 financial assistance by parents number adjusted?
Yeah, I don't know the history, but it's been on the books for some time. God, I want to say, I'm guessing it's in the ed code written that way. That's why we have it at $750. But I'd probably say, I'm venturing, and I'm going out on a limb bit because I haven't verified it, but I was probably say at least 15 plus years ago. So yeah, I mean, you look at the inflation, that dollar amount is pretty low.
Yeah, I find it just not rational. So.
Thank you. Trustee Fagan.
So I think those people involved in this are certainly deserving, and it's an admirable proposal. I may have missed it, but in this era of falling revenue and increased expenses and uncertainty, I think this question has got to be asked about almost anything. And maybe you already addressed this, but what's it going to cost?
So we looked at this. So what we do know is that there was 357 denials. So the only way that I could do that is kind of model what I talked about during the information session, is looking at a 10% reversal, 15 and 20%. So if it's a 10% reversal of those 357 denials, then I'm taking the annual tuition fees and the non-resident fees at taking 12 units per semester, since the students who are non-residents average unit load is 12.9. You're looking at you're actually looking at $9,500 worth of tuition, because that's the non-resident rate. So that's going to account for anywhere a range of $342,000 to $674,000. But I do want to put this in context just a little bit. So as of fall 2019, we had 25,592 non-resident students. The majority of those students, 68% of those non-resident students, are in classifications that they are not eligible to be reclassified as resident students, because they hold a student visa or any other type of visa that prevents them from being resident students, or they're in classifications or immigration statuses that prevent them from being resident students. So that leaves us a balance of about 9,700 students. And of those 9,700 students, we only saw 8% of those students actually seek reclassification. So of the total non-resident students, I wanted to put it in context, it is a small number that we're looking at of students who would seek a reclassification.
Trustee Sebelius, please.
I already mentioned in our discussion in May that asking about the cost of the budget is the wrong question here. We are trying to change the Title V specifications in order to assess better who is a bona fide resident student. And if they are, then we shouldn't question what it will cost us and what effect it will have on our budget. I'm in full support of this Title V change because I think it more clearly specifies which student is a resident, and that is good for the students. And the students will benefit from this change, and I cannot see that this change in Title V would hurt a student and reverse or make it more difficult for them to prove that they're bona fide residents in California. So I'm in full support of this Title V change.
Trustee Kames.
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly echo what Trustee Sebelius said, and I think in our agenda it says that currently a lack of financial independence is an automatic disqualifier for a non-resident student seeking reclassification. And I think it's very important to look at things case by case and circumstance by circumstance, and this would give us an opportunity to do that.
Thank you. I see no other raised hands. So there has been a motion and a second for approval of this amendment. Hearing no further comments or questions, Ms. Kiss, please take a roll call vote. Only members of the Committee on Educational Policy may vote. Again, trustees, please unmute your audio for the roll call vote.
Thank you, Trustee
Yes.
Fong. Okay, Trustee Abrego. Trustee Adamson. Again, please unmute your audio for the vote.
I don't know what's happened to Ms. Kiss, but I will happily step in.
Thank you, Board Secretary.
Trustee Abrego.
Yes.
Trustee Adamson.
Yes.
Trustee Carney.
Yes.
Trustee Eisen.
Yes.
Trustee Fagan.
Yes.
Trustee Farrar.
Yes.
Chair Fong.
Yes.
Trustee Kames.
Yes.
Trustee Sebelius.
Yes.
Trustee Steinhauser.
Yes.
Chair Kimbell.
Yes.
Chancellor White.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. The item is approved. Next is item 3 of the discussion agenda, and it is an action item regarding amendments to Title V regarding ethnic studies and social justice, GE Breath. The item will be presented by Lauren J. Blanchard, Executive Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs, and Dr. Allison Rinn, Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Programs, Innovations, and Faculty Development. Dr. Blanchard, please begin.
Again, thank you so much, Chair Fong. Much has changed since we last met on May 12th. Just 2 weeks after our last board meeting, we collectively held our breath as we watched the shocking video of the brutal murder of George Floyd. And when we exhaled, floodgates of sorrow, anger, grief, and frustration burst open. A sea of protests poured into our streets, changing our landscape and washing away any possibility that the status quo could hold. I have been deeply moved, and I am very proud to say that young people, including many of our students, are driving a sea change. Standing tall and united, we see students honoring their parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, too many generations past, in demanding an end to the racism and oppression that continue to plague our nation. I am also quite proud to say that California State University stand with these young people, our students, and that the CSU is taking action. In June, the CSU supported the passage of Assembly Constitutional Amendment 5, providing voters in November the opportunity to repeal provisions of Proposition 209. If approved, this measure will allow the CSU to better address educational equity and degree completion through proven strategies, including scholarships, as well as recruitment and retention programs that can consider race and ethnicity. With full support from the Chancellor's Office and all campus presidents, Our 23 campus police chiefs also have taken action. Collectively, they have pledged their commitment to adopt the recommendations of President Barack Obama's Task Force on 21st Century Policing, including disavowal of the violent methods of our nation's past. And today, with your action, the CSU will deliver the responsive leadership that our students expect and deserve by instituting the first change to our general education requirements in more than 40 years. This proposal will require all CSU graduates to complete an undergraduate course in ethnic studies and social justice as a component of their CSU degree program. 6 years in the making, shaped by our faculty body and our 23 campuses, the proposal before you lifts ethnic studies to prominence in our curriculum in line with the natural and social sciences, the arts, and the humanities. Heeding the call of our students, this proposal advances and strengthens the field of ethnic studies by placing it at the intersection of marginalized communities and applying these essential lens of social justice. Under this proposal, nearly 125,000 of our students each year will explore the perspectives of Native Californians, study Africana literature, analyze police reform, examine disparities in public health, and interrogate the economics of racism among course topics. And they will also better understand and appreciate and become inspired to fulfill their role in solving societal problems and in transforming California. Dr. Allison Wren, Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Programs, Innovation, and Faculty Development, will now provide additional context as to why our recommended amendment is vital to our students and, more importantly, vital to our nation's future. Dr. Wren.
Thank you, Dr. Blanchard. Today, we are requesting board approval that all California State University undergraduate students will complete one 3-unit lower division course in ethnic studies and social justice as part of CSU General Education Breadth. The new ethnic studies and social justice requirement would be inclusive of the 4 historic disciplines of ethnic studies, as well as the experiences of historically oppressed groups such as LGBTQ, Muslim, and Jewish populations. Moreover, the inclusive nature of this proposal allows more opportunities for students to choose from courses that meet the unique needs of their campus community or interests. As way of background, CSU General Education totals 48 units. With the addition of a new GEU requirement, 3 units will need to be reallocated from another area to keep the total number of GE units unchanged. Social science, known as Area D, has the greatest number of units at 9 lower division units, which we propose to reduce to 6 lower division units. To address a topic noted during public comment, I would like to clarify that the addition of a new ethnic studies and social justice requirement would constitute a new GE area, most likely Area F. Whether a new requirement is created via the trustees' action today or by legislation, both paths require the removal of 3 units from somewhere in GE, most likely Area D, to create a new Area F requirement. This implementation is proposed for the 2023-24 catalog year to allow time to work collaboratively with faculty and campuses to create the needed policy and curricular changes across the system. The CSU timeline also allows for more effective stewardship of CSU resources in light of current state budget reductions. The call to elevate the knowledge and skills that will help our students be effective leaders of social change in their communities is undeniable, And as we look to implement the first change in CSU general education in 40 years, it is imperative that we do so in a way that maximizes, not restricts, academic freedom. General education is a program for all students, regardless of major or disciplines of interest. It is the foundation of a CSU degree. Thus, the development of learning outcomes and courses to be included within a campus-based GE program is the right and responsibility of faculty from across the campus. As way of example, CSU math faculty do not solely determine courses for the math general education category. This approach ensures a robust academic engagement that is the hallmark of the CSU, and this proposal is the direct result of the CSU's long-standing practice of shared governance. It represents the careful and respectful conversations and consultation with campuses and constituencies over 6 years. Ultimately, the CSU proposal reflects the perspectives of multiple stakeholders that has led to a more inclusive enhancement to our general education programs. The CSU proposal is designed to be inclusive and relevant so that we can meet both this moment and anticipate the needs of future generations. And as we help design the future of our state, we do so in alignment with educational partners, such as the California Community Colleges, that have defined requirements in ethnic studies and social justice already. The CSU proposal is centered on the 4 historic groups that traditionally comprise ethnic studies and intersects the voices and perspectives of other historically oppressed groups in America. Let us be led by our students, who are showing us what it truly means to be seen and accepted as a whole integrated person. To be asked to focus on just one identity, whether it be racial, gender, sexual orientation, religion, or ability, does not reflect the lived experiences of students today, nor provide a complete set of tools to advance social justice in our nation. The goal of the Ethnic Studies and Social Justice General Education requirement before you today is to prepare students to live and work in society through an academic experience that will develop their intercultural cognizance, sensitivity, and commitment to social justice. Courses that meet this requirement will focus on intersectionality and the comparative study of race, ethnicity, class, gender, sexuality, religion, immigration status, ability, and/or age in the United States. What's more, the CSU proposal addresses current and emerging social justice issues. CSU courses such as health disparities in urban communities, the economics of poverty, discrimination and immigration, and social inequality, to name just a few, would meet this new GE requirement. The range of courses that may satisfy the ethnic studies and social justice requirement will not be limitless. For example, many courses that currently meet the campus diversity requirement may not meet the new ethnic studies and social justice requirement. Each CSU campus will establish the learning outcomes for the ethnic studies and social justice GE courses. If we are to provide CSU graduates with the ability to apply their knowledge and experience into tangible action, it can only be achieved by creating more opportunities for learning, not fewer. In sum, the proposed CSU Ethnic Studies and Social Justice GE requirement will equip our graduates, the future leaders of California, to advance true systemic change. What's more, it does so by providing latitude for implementation through continued shared governance at the campus level. We acknowledge there is a choice being made today. Assembly Bill 1460 offers an alternative direction. On screen is a comparison of some of the key differences between these two paths. We first presented this recommendation to you in May and have outlined today why we believe this proposal is in the best interest of the CSU and our students. Publicly voicing their perspective, the Academic Senate of the California State University, the recognized faculty body for consultation and curriculum, already has passed 2 resolutions opposing AB 1460. Given our constrained state resources going forward as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, there is also a practical distinction between the CSU proposal and AB 1460. It is estimated that AB 1460 would cost approximately $16 million to implement as an unfunded mandate. In its analysis of the bill, the California Department of Finance has concurred with this estimate. The bill's timeline would also result in this cost impacting our current fiscal year, a year facing unprecedented challenges, as you will hear from our Finance Committee. In contrast, the CSU proposal would cost no more than $3 to $4 million and would be distributed over 3 years. We ask you to approve the path forward that best meets our students' and universities' needs. I will now turn to Dr. Blanchard for his concluding remarks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wren. As the largest and most diverse four-year public institution of higher education in the country, the California State University has long stood as a beacon of hope and knowledge, as a standard bearer for inclusive excellence. The CSU is really proud of its heritage as the birthplace of ethnic studies at San Francisco State University 50 years ago. Building upon this legacy, the CSU's proposal not only elevates the study of the 4 racial and ethnic groups that traditionally comprise the field of ethnic studies, but it also makes room for the voices and experiences of other oppressed and marginalized groups. Equally important, it helps our students understand the intersectional nature of racism, sexism, homophobia, and other forms of prejudice, and provides our students with the tools to break down the institutional barriers that block our pursuit of a just and more equitable and humane society. The CSU proposal includes a realistic plan for funding in these uncertain times. It protects academic freedom and safeguards the CSU's long tradition of shared governance. And it sets a timeline that allows our campus faculty to continue their work to develop our rich and meaningful courses, including the associated learning outcomes, as well as relevant and impactful other aspects that we will have before us. This CSU proposal addresses not only the what and the why of ethnic studies disciplines, but as importantly, the how of social justice. In short, this is a solution by the CSU for the CSU that best serves our students and our state of California. This item is actually a one-sentence addition to Title V, but there's still much work ahead of us to implement this proposal. If the trustees today pass this amendment, I will ask the Academic Senate of the CSU to reach out to the campus senates and to the chairs of ethnic studies on campuses again, but this time to begin the consultative process as we develop the executive order. For a generation that is demanding change, this is our opportunity now to act and to ensure that CSU graduates have both the knowledge and the actionable tools to recognize, question, and ultimately dismantle racial and social injustices. At this time, Dr. Wren and I are joined by Dr. James Miner, Mr. Leo Van Cleve, and Mr. Nathan Evans, and we welcome any questions or comments that the board may have at this time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Blanchard and Dr. Wren, for the presentation. Because this item also involves amending a provision of Title V of the California Code of Regulations, these proceedings are deemed to be a public hearing under the provisions of California's Education Code. While a number of communications regarding this item were sent directly to trustees, during the 45-day notice period for this action item, no written comments were received by the Chancellor's Chancellor's Office staff in relation to the official posting of this amendment. And other than the comments received during the public comment period at the beginning of this meeting today, which will be part of the public and official record, no one has requested to address the committee during the hearing. The public hearing is now closed. The recommended amendments to Title V regarding ethnic studies and social justice, GE Breath, is an action item before the Committee of Educational Policy. Before we proceed to any questions or discussion, may I ask for a preliminary motion to approve these changes? And trustees, please be sure to unmute your audio and please identify yourself if you speak. I see Trustee Steinhauser.
Yes, thank you, Chair Fong. This is Trustee Steinhauser, and I move that we approve the change for Title V regarding ethnic studies and social justice.
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the amendment. At this time, it is now open for questions and discussion, and I do see that there are hands raised. I would like to begin the discussion based on the public comment that we had today. There were some issues that were brought up, and I would appreciate if it could please, if we could have clarification on how the Academic Senate, both statewide and campus-based, and the ethnic studies chairs and campus faculty and students were engaged in consultation for the CSU proposal for ethnic studies and social justice. And also what actions were taken, if any, with the Ethnic Studies Task Force recommendations after they were revived by the Chancellor's Office.
Thank you, Chair Fong. I'll ask Leo Van Cleve to address the matter dealing with consultation, and then I will thereafter address your question regarding action steps taken as a result of the Ethnic Studies Task Force. Leo?
Thank you, Chair Fong. So as was indicated in the presentation, the Senate opposed in 2019 AB 1460, and also in 2019, the chair of the Academic Senate testified against it in the legislature. They opposed, they voted formally again in 2020 to oppose AB 1460. But they were also in support of ethnic studies programs, and they passed a resolution to that effect as well. Last September, the Academic Senate met with members of the Ethnic Studies faculty at Cal State Long Beach for the afternoon and had a long discussion. Coming out of that September meeting, they passed a resolution that requested feedback from campus Senate chairs and from the Ethnic Studies Council to be given to the Academic Senate. When they met again in November, they drafted a resolution. They shared that with campuses, again, asking for further feedback. That feedback became their January resolution, which we then took and sent out for additional feedback to all 23 campuses, campus presidents, the campus Senate chairs, and others who may have wished to comment, and we did gather that information. Based on that, Dr. Blanchard shared a memo with the chair of the Academic Senate with our summary of the feedback as well as our suggestions for additional additions to the proposal. The Academic Senate passed another resolution in March that included those some of those provisions that we had discussed with them. I think there was in your board item a comparison of that resolution along with our proposal. So we did that as well. And then finally, our proposal came forward in May, and as has been noted, We have narrowed the requirements somewhat from what the diversity requirement would have required based on the feedback of the Academic Senate. The Academic Senate did also endorse, however, a broader approach to the subjects involved. And finally, I would stress what Dr. Blanchard said at the end of his comments, that implementation will require still further consultation, and that would be with both the Academic Senate and we will ask the Academic Senate to work with the ethnic studies chairs in providing additional consultation. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Blanchard?
Yeah, thank you, Leo. And I just want to tag on a bit to what Mr. Van Cleve just mentioned, and that is the fact that, yes, there is more work to be done on the campuses. What we are asking the board to give consideration to today is really an approval of the GE framework change that will now include ethnic studies and social justice. The actual work that's tied to that, we're asking for the time frame until 2023, which is the time that's really needed to make sure that there is a consultative process that will occur on the respective campuses in the development of the learning outcomes that would be associated with this respective requirement. And that will certainly be inclusive of not only faculty in ethnic studies, but faculty from other disciplines as well, given that this is a general education requirement. So the second question that you raised, Madam Chair, is specific to what actions have been taken relative to the task force report that came in the hands of Chancellor White in 2016. Keep in mind that when the chancellor first arrived, I was not here, but when the chancellor first arrived, this was one of the major topics that he was asked to give a lot of attention to, and hence he called forth for the task force to be formed in order to look very carefully at what could be some recommendations to ensure that ethnic studies would continue to have not only a permanent home at CSU, but more importantly, really have a place of prominence in where our programs and programming would be found within the CSU. So with that, and I just want to put a quick frame around this, that, you know, the reality is that there's been quite a bit of work that's been done to really improve the opportunities for Black and Brown students within the CSU, that the commitment that we make for students when they enter our doors, that not only are we saying that you are qualified to enter our doors, but also that we have to really work hard to ensure that we are also stating to them and acting in a way that we're also saying that you are assured that you will complete your program with us at CSU. Access is one thing, completion is another. And so as we have become now a majority higher education enterprise where we're serving more Black and Brown students at the CSU than we are majority students, it really did become important that we looked at everything we were doing in terms of academic equity. So a lot of the work that we've done around the graduation initiative that centers on student success efforts, that becomes important. The statement that we have been actualizing around the elimination of equity gaps for our students by race, ethnicity, as well as by socioeconomic status, those are very intentional to really improve the quality of education. Lastly, I'll say, as the foundation around this, the work that you helped us to accomplish and our campuses have accomplished in the elimination of developmental education and replacing it with a support model that now allows more students to be able to pass looking at the introductory math and English courses, that those are all foundational things that's really been done to improve the quality of education for all of our students and to improve completion rates, particularly for our Black and Brown students. Not diluting, not watering down, but making sure that students are able to meet the standards. In addition to that, you know that there were 5 recommendations that were brought forth by the task force that was formed at that time. There is no more task force. However, we know that the ethnic studies chairs actually meet on a regular basis. And one thing that the chancellor committed was that he was going to follow up on all 5 of these and really place the base of responsibility for the movement, especially of the general education requirement, but also of the other 4 areas, place it in the hands of the campuses. But not just place it in their hands, but to ask for an active report that would be placed within the development of a compendium that we would share back with the campuses to show exactly how our campuses have been moving with all 5 of these. Let me just give you a brief snapshot of what that compendium says. There were 10 recommendations total, but here's 5 of them that we know that we have been really working hard to achieve. Obviously, we know that the general education, all of these are recommendations, but a general education requirement that, we have not just been sitting on our hands. The reality is that a number of the campuses had already begun looking very carefully at how this could evolve into a general education requirement. And we were not only prodded by the campuses to look at this from a holistic standpoint, but obviously prodded by the legislature as well, including the Senate Education Committee about a year ago, who said, let's get this work done. We want the CSU to really take the front seat and get this work done. And we have done just that. In addition to that, one of the recommendations really focuses on the hiring of more ethnic studies faculty members. This was in 2016. If you look from 2016 until now, we have hired 71 more tenure track faculty appointed faculty members in ethnic studies at the CSU within that 4-year period, and with more coming. That's a part of the plans that's laid out by each of the campuses. Also with curriculum development as a 3rd one, and I'll be done in just a second. Looking at ways that we can really strengthen ethnic studies departments and programs. And so as a result of the strengthening and the focus, the micro focus that's been placed on ethnic studies across the CSU, we're very proud that our enrollments have increased by nearly 9% in ethnic studies disciplines. Fourthly, I think it's really important that when we look at advising practices and making sure that these advising practices really reflects the value that ethnic studies actually places on Black and Brown students, that 21 of our 23 campuses have enhanced the integration of ethnic studies in advising by training all advisors in ethnic studies, allocating faculty time to provide support for students in ethnic studies, and creating peer support groups for students that are majoring and or minoring in ethnic studies. Lastly, in terms of campus climate, how have our campuses really been working to create a campus climate that's conducive to affirming and reaffirming ethnic studies principles? And I'm happy to say that 22 of our 23 campuses in the last compendium that we published have worked to really increase the visibility of ethnic studies by forming ethnic studies faculty groups, expanding extracurricular ethnic studies programming and events, and featuring ethnic studies across their student orientation programs, and encouraging students to not only major in ethnic studies, but to ensure that they're taking courses that's aligned with ethnic studies. So no, our campuses have not just been sitting back. And yes, there has been action, critical action, that's making a difference for the field of ethnic studies and really honoring the place that it holds at the CSU.
Thank you, Dr. Blanchard, for that clarification. I really appreciate it. We have many hands raised. Trustee Morales.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to state that I continue to be opposed to this proposal. This is categorized as an ethnic studies and social justice requirement. I would support this proposal if this was titled social justice requirement, because that's what it is. It is conceivable under this proposal that a student could fulfill this requirement, the proposed requirement, without ever being exposed to the history of Native Americans or African Americans, and never take a class from the traditional ethnic studies programs. For these reasons, I continue to be opposed to this proposal. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Trustee Abrego.
Thank you, Chair Fong, and thank you for the report. And let me also acknowledge and thank the speakers from this morning. Your comments were very useful. My concern with this, and I would encourage my colleagues on the committee to reject the motion. And let me tell you why. First of all, if AB 1460 is signed into law, it supersedes this proposal. So why not wait until we know the outcome of AB 1460? The other concern I have is that we keep referring to legislative intervention into the affairs of the CSU. But if it wasn't for this legislative nudging of the CSU, programs and legislations like the EOP program would never have become a reality, or student affirmative action, or even the California Bilingual Education Act that influenced the teacher training programs of the CSU. It seems to me that every time we have consideration for a program that will impact on minorities and students of color, it becomes a struggle. If it hadn't been for the students at San Francisco State who demonstrated, who had the sittings, the taking over of buildings, the hunger strikes, we would have never had ethnic studies. The projected cost of $16 million to implement AB 1460 versus $3 to $4 million for the CSU proposal is another area of concern for me, because the committee has never reviewed the budget. When we talk about the CSU proposal being less costly because it includes a range of courses from existing disciplines, I wonder, but because ethnic studies also have existing courses. The CSU proposals mentions a need for ethnic studies to hire more faculty, but wouldn't the other departments who choose to teach a social justice course also incur faculty costs? We need to see the budget. The committee needs to see the budget before we can make an educated decision on this. Across the country, we are witnessing demonstrations about cultural and institutional racism. The demonstrators are asking for change and hoping people will listen. Every CSU Ethnic Studies Department program in the CSU opposes this proposal and supports AB 1460. I was trying to keep count of how many speakers we had this morning, but it had to be over 70 or 80 speakers, individuals and constituent groups supporting AB 1460 and opposing the CSU board proposal. The board has also received a petition from over 300 CSU faculty members opposing the CSU proposal and in support of AB 1460. The CSU Ethnic Studies Councils comprised of faculty, CSU faculty say they were not included in the CSU proposal formulation process, yet it will impact on them. I don't believe this proposal is ready to be advanced to the full board. We have more work to do. Can you just imagine this? And I was surprised about this. I was looking at the article that was published by the LA Times yesterday, I believe, when it reported the minority racial faculty in the UC system to students. And so I tried to do the same thing with the CSU. And a study in 19 by the Campaign for College Opportunity and Left Behind, they reported that 10% of the CSU faculty are Latino, 18% are Asian, 4% are Black, and 62% white. So I would not be surprised if a CSU student could complete their education will never coming across or interacting with a minority faculty member. The Ethnic Studies, AB 1460, will resolve that concern. So I urge the committee members to reject the motion And I would introduce a new motion that we would suspend the proposal until the CSU, the Academic Senate, and the Ethnic Studies Council would come together to discuss and hash out the concerns.
Thank you, Trustee Abrego. So are you placing a motion on the table?
Yes.
And the motion is?
The motion is to suspend consideration of this proposal as it is written today, and to ask the Chancellor's office to convene a meeting with the statewide Academic Senate, the CSU Ethnic Studies Council, to resolve the concerns expressed in this proposal.
So Trustee Abrego has made a motion to amend the recommended amendments to the Title V regarding ethnic studies and social justice, GE Breath. Do we have a second to his motion?
I would like to second that motion.
Thank you. So we have the motion and the second. Dr. Blanchard, would you like to offer any comments on this motion?
Dr. Wren will begin.
All right, Dr. Wren.
Thank you. And I just would like to respond to some of the comments from Dr. Abrego that relate to his motion. In terms of the budget was developed with support of institutional research here at the CSU, looking at the number of students who had never taken an ethnic studies course, first-time freshmen, and estimating what the instructional costs would be potentially with AB 1460. This includes administrative costs to develop new departments, to fund release time for faculty to develop new courses. It also includes concerns about our transfer, our associate degree for transfer. Upon the development of this budget, and there's more details about the budget in your written item in the board, the California Department of Finance reviewed this budget. And they concurred with us. And in fact, in late February, I attended a meeting with the California Department of Finance, as well as Dr. Weber's staff. And the Department of Finance very clearly stated that they thought that this was the correct amount for the budget here. So this has been reviewed closely. I think really the second main point of why not wait or why not delay is really tied to the legislative session in process right now. If indeed the board chooses not to act today, AB 1460 will continue to move forward in all likelihood. And then it will be before the governor. And so I just ask that the trustees consider that fact in terms of their decision making here. I'm happy to ask if I missed any of the points that you raised, Dr. Abrego. I'm happy to answer them.
I do want to add at this point as well that the statement of waiting is there really is no need to wait. First of all, I can be clear about the fact that there has been all of the due diligence looking at every aspect of this that we have performed in consultation with our respective campuses, and that we're clear about the direction that we're taking here, and that especially as it relates to the focus on ethnic studies and social justice, looking at the cost implications, understanding the importance of students who really do want to make sure that they are taking the ethnic studies courses that are relegated, if you will, to the 4 cultural areas. They will have the opportunity to take those courses. There's nothing preventing them. If there's another student who is from, let's say, an African-American background and who feels that the African-American studies course is not necessarily the direction that they want to go because of their own lived experience and background that they already have in African-American studies, and that they prefer to take the economics of racism, then why should we prevent that student from doing that? It's about the student choice element of this. It doesn't in any way undermine ethnic studies. It actually empowers students to be able to act upon that which they have learned themselves in the area and expertise of ethnic studies. So the last thing I'll say about why now and why we should not wait is largely because of the fact that we have been working on this for 6 years. Well, certainly the 5 years that I have been here, and looking at all of the recommendations that I just described to you earlier. And we've been looking at this from the lens of a general education requirement. And we have spoken with a number of different groups, directly and indirectly, including ethnic studies chairs and other faculty members. And we are very clear that this is the direction that our campuses are seeking at this point for us to move forward. It's interesting that the mixed messages that we get, you know, we continue to hear, what's taking you so long? Why haven't you done this yet? Why haven't you moved forward with the campuses? Why haven't you moved forward with the general education requirement? Well, here we are with a general education requirement, with all of the due diligence associated with it. There's no need to wait. The time is now.
Thank you.
Just for clarification purposes, the committee has not seen the budget, and I did refer to the Title V legislative Department of Finance reference that they're going on the recommendation of the CSU's budget expenditures. So I don't know how closely they looked at the breakdown of the budget. I certainly would like the committee to have that opportunity. Regarding the choice for students, the choice, we try to blend in the ethnic studies and social justice, but it really is the requirement, the way it's written, will be either a ethnic studies course or a social justice course. So that gives the latitude for students to never even have to take an ethnic studies course. Is that correct?
Yes, that could be a possibility.
Thank you.
Trustee Kames?
Thank you. First of all, Dr. Blanchard and your staff, I just wanted to take a moment to thank you and for the hard work that you've been doing for the last couple of years. I think just to kind of, before I want to get into what I kind of had in mind of sharing, in terms of time, I think time is important, like you said, Dr. Blanchard, but I also think that the quality of what we're proposing and what we're trying to make happen also matters. So yes, time is important, but also the quality of what we're trying to implement is also very, very important. And so I just wanted to quickly just kind of give an opinion about this. And so an ethnic studies class is really an interdisciplinary study about race and ethnicity, and it focuses on experiences and perspectives of people of color. So I guess based on that, I understand the hard work that has been put into this proposal, but I do question the quality of an ethnic studies and social justice class when compared to a traditional ethnic studies class or a traditional ethnic studies approach. And kind of to help you understand what I am kind of implying, an example of this would be kind of a class. So I looked at some of the potential classes that can be offered by the CSU proposal. And so a class in economics of poverty, discrimination, and immigration, I'm questioning if that's going to serve the same purpose as for example, Afro-American history course, which teaches American history from the perspective of Black people. And as we know, history is normally not narrated by those, history is normally narrated by those with privilege, which says a lot about why this is important. Now, during public comment today, someone mentioned that, there should be more groups included when we're talking about ethnic studies. And to that degree, and I guess to that extent, I do agree. Jewish studies, Armenian studies, Arabic studies, all those are very important. But I think in terms of the CSU proposal, it really kind of stretched and kind of made a huge generalization of what an ethnic studies course should stand for. And lastly, I think when Trustee Abrego asked, can you take an ethnic studies or a social justice class in order to fulfill that requirement, the answer was yes, you could actually fulfill this requirement without taking an ethnic studies class. So then at that point, I questioned, is this really an ethnic studies and social justice proposal, or is it kind of an or type of thing? And so again, I am big, I support ethnic studies classes, but I support them when they're taught in an authentic and traditional ways that really teaches students about kind of the holistical approach and the perspective and the history of a specific group, which is why I chose to support the motion that Trustee Abrego made.
Thank you. Trustee Steinhauser.
Yes, thank you. And I want to commend staff for bringing this proposal to us. I would only ask that if this is approved, that through the consultation process, that we have our campuses work with our local LEAs, K-12, because I've had ethnic studies with Cal State Long Beach for over 6-7 years. 700 kids take it every year. It's a college class. This would be a great way to have that requirement into the K-12 arena. And I know El Rancho is doing that, and I know Norwalk La Mirada is doing it. So I would see this would be a perfect opportunity for us to expand this class into the senior and junior courses in the K-12s. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Fagan.
My guess is, and certainly based on some of the comments so far, that the one thing we can all agree on is a need and a desire to have an active, effective ethnic studies requirement. So what we're really talking about is how do we get there? Quite frankly, I think Trustee Abrego is hit upon something that is really important. And that is, if the bill becomes law, everything we're talking about here and everything we're doing regarding the new proposal is moot. And we're going to find that out fairly quickly. I think the Assembly Member Weber indicated that the conference committee is going to be finished with this in the next couple of weeks, and I assume then it would be over to the governor. If he signs it, and I have no idea, but I have a guess, then there we are, and we'll know that, I would think, before the next board meeting. So do we really want to be voting on something today when what we vote on is going to be completely changed regarding what's going to happen? I think it is a good idea to just, it's been too many years putting this into effect. And I certainly understand Dr. Blanchard's concern with about darned if we do and darned if we don't as far as the timing on this, but I don't see that 2 more months is going to make a whole lot of difference on this. And we'll know a lot more then. Now, if we were to vote on this proposal today, I can't bring myself to vote against a serious ethnic studies requirement. I would vote for it. But obviously there's a lot of concerns. And I too was concerned when it was made clear that you could actually meet the requirement without taking an ethnic studies course. Now, maybe this idea is completely crazy, but is 3 units enough? Maybe 6 units should be there. If the bill is signed into law, would it be possible, for example, for us to then start trying to talk rather quickly about adding a social justice GE requirement that would take in the other half of what this proposal talks about? I don't know. But at least we would be operating in a context of knowing what the law is and knowing what we're up against and what our goals are. All we have to do is wait till the next board meeting to figure that out. So that's kind of where I'd go, is to postpone it, and I'd go along with Trustee Abrego on that.
Thank you. Trustee Eisen?
Wow. So we are the Board of Trustees. It is our job to be looking at this and making a decision. It's not the job of the legislature. And it is really, I mean, we are lucky that we have a democratic and progressive legislature in the state. But as far as I know, universities are not guided in their curriculum decisions by the state legislatures in the states that they exist. I can imagine if we were in a different state that we would be scared out of our wits by the idea that the legislature would be telling us what we should be teaching. So this is our responsibility. You can argue, I think, that we have not met our responsibility for quite a long time, but we are now being asked to meet it, and I think we must. I don't think the fact that we oppose having the legislature dictate curriculum to this public university, and Doug is absolutely right, it certainly does not mean that any of us are opposed to an ethnic studies requirement. We are just opposed to having that decision taken from us, and we should make that decision. I served for 2 years on the GE task force. Changing the GE requirements is extraordinarily difficult and time consuming. There are lots of vested interests in lots of pieces of it. It's not a surprise in a way that it has been 40 years since we have made a change to our GE requirements. So what we are doing, what we are proposing is momentous. It is truly momentous. And as far as I know, no other university has added this kind of a requirement to its GE requirements. And the vast, vast, vast majority of universities have GE requirements, because GE requirements are part of a liberal education. They are the notion that when you graduate from this university, you will have this set of skills and this set of knowledge base that will carry you forward for the rest of your lives. That's what we are trying to decide now. What should that GE requirement look like? And we're not only trying to, I don't know if it was Allison or Dr. Blanchard who said this, we're not only trying to meet this moment, which is a big moment, but we're trying to meet moments that we can't even anticipate. It could be another 40 years before we take a look at the GE requirements. I hope not, but it could be. So in my mind, I've heard the expression that this weakens, this waters down, but to me, it is ethnic studies plus, not ethnic studies minus. And I think about, I used to practice employment law, and the number one statute that we dealt with was Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, passed because of the civil rights movement and designed to address discrimination in employment on the basis of race, color, and national origin, which are three of the categories in that statute. But also in that statute are sex and religion. And I'm sure all of you noticed that just this month, the Supreme Court interpreted sex, which has been in that statute for 56 years, to include LGBTQ status. And that is momentous. That is going to change the lives of, hundreds of thousands, millions of people. So they decided something 56 years ago that is having impact now. And so we have to make a decision. Do we want a narrow definition, or do we want a broader definition that will anticipate things that we cannot anticipate at this moment? And I am in favor of the broader decision, and I am absolutely in favor of us making this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Eisen. Dr. Minor, you wanted to make a comment?
Well, good afternoon, trustees. Only prior to hearing Trustee Eisen's eloquent rendition of my comment. So let me just maybe try to make a finer point. I grew concerned listening to the conversation that of the possibility of pitting disciplines or issues against one another. It's not either or, it's both and I love the phrasing of ethnic studies plus. I think the proposal that the CSU has put forward, no question about it, that the traditional 4 disciplines represent the anchor of this proposal and of the requirement. But if I go back to the 1960s, as we just heard, there would not have been a lot of conversation about Muslim American studies, LGBTQ studies, women's studies, for example, in the way that we value those disciplines now. And so I worry a little bit that the conversation about watering down or either or is probably the wrong conceptual framework for this issue. It's ethnic studies, and it represents a more inclusive and an extension of where we began in the 1960s. The last thing I'll say, the sociologist in me would also suggest that a pragmatic feature of this is some of the greatest thinkers that represent these disciplines are not all housed in ethnic studies departments. Claude Steele, who created Stereotype Threat, which changed the way we think about that, is in the sociology department. So I just think, I want us to consider moving away from an either or and to think about this as more inclusive with the idea that the 4 traditional departments will remain the anchor for this requirement.
Thank you, Dr. Minor. Trustee McGrory?
Yes, I'd echo a lot of what Trustee Eisen said. This puts me in a tough position. I have a great deal of respect for Assemblywoman Weber. She's a tremendous civil rights leader, political leader, both in San Diego and in the state of California. But I think we have a principle here, and that is we believe in the university's shared governance system. It has yielded this recommendation to us. And I agree with Vice Chancellor Blanchard, who said we're really sending a mixed message when we keep on bringing these kind of curriculum issues up and tell the staff that it's taken so long to get here, and then when it gets here, we continue it. I think whatever the legislature and the governor is going to do, they should do. They believe in it. But I don't think it's the right thing to do. I think the right thing is the recommendation that we have before us, and I think we should vote on it today and tomorrow. I'm not on the committee. But I think this is a really important area of study. I think it's California's increasing diversity, and I think it's just very important that it be part of the GE requirements. The one thing I would ask Vice Chancellor Blanchard, I just want to, from my perspective, make sure that this doesn't get watered down as it would be criticized for by adding social justice, that there's a real connection between ethnic studies and the results and the kind of courses you've been talking about, but I want to make sure it doesn't get too broad. So I just would like you to respond to that.
Sorry about that. Yes, you're absolutely correct that this is not in any way designed to be a cultural diversity requirement. This is definitely the synergy and the comparative nature between the anchor groups that you just heard James mention, and how to apply that into an action mode through social justice. So the answer to your question is yes. We're looking at intersectionality. We're looking at comparativeness between those anchor groups, as well as social justice, and understanding that the work that lies ahead, using that as a frame, is that now the faculty will come together to develop the learning outcomes and the courses that will be associated with this. We're not determining what those courses are today. That really is going to be the purview of the faculty as their responsibility in order to meet this general education requirement to make that determination.
Thank you. We have 5 more trustees who wish to speak. Trustee Taylor.
Thank you, and good afternoon. To me, it seems as though there are two criteria by which we should go thumbs up or thumbs down on any proposal that comes to us. And in this specific case, we have one, an important focus on student learning. Will this requirement allow our students to develop the skills that will make them solid professionals in the working world and leaders in our communities? And secondly, the importance of institutional change. It seems to me that on the merits, this proposal advanced today by the CO staff is far superior to anything that AB 1460 is putting on the table. Not only does our academic senate oppose AB 1460, and it has a very unrealistic timeline, the institutional ownership of social justice cannot be just put into 4 departments off in a corner and everybody else then can sit back and relax. The fact of the matter is social justice has to be owned by biology and engineering and economics and psychology and history. We have to engage those faculties in transforming the way CSU teaches and engages with students of color as well as majority students. AB 1460 doesn't do that, but this CO proposal does. It will be better in terms of long-term transformational impact on students who need to understand important issues around history and economics and engineering and how they have historically affected, in many ways, marginalized communities of color. So I'm a strong supporter of this, and I strongly support what the CO is doing, and I encourage members of the committee to vote in favor of the proposal as advanced.
Thank you, Trustee Taylor. Chair Campbell.
Yes. I also want to echo what Peter said, and also Trustee Eisen. They laid it out beautifully. My number one concern with this, as chair of the Board of Trustees, is if we blithely, whatever it was, just irrespective of even the issue we'd be discussing, to blithely go down the path of allowing the legislature to dictate what we're going to teach, who's going to teach it, is, for me, mind-boggling. We may absolutely agree with what the proposal is, but it should come from the CSU. If in 10 years we have a different legislature, we have and this has happened, things change. We have seen it. I've seen it in my lifetime multiple times. If there is suddenly a bill saying we must teach creationism, it must be equal to science, and it passes, then we have to do it. I just think this is extremely dangerous. To me, that is just a sort of no-go, just starting and stopping there. But I also agree with Peter's argument, and Becky, I thought, put it beautifully. So I'm absolutely in support of our proposal.
Thank you. Trustee Abrego.
Yes, I just wanted to respond to Trustee Eisen's perception that the legislators are dictating curriculum. They are not. In fact, it's pretty clear in the bill that they are deferring to the statewide academic senate and the Ethnic Studies Council to work out the curriculum and the objectives and how it's going to be taught. So it's not a curriculum direction from the legislature. The other thing that, and then I pointed out earlier, is that without legislative inspiration, a lot of the things that the CSU has enacted would never have happened without legislation intervention. We just recently celebrated the Educational Opportunity Program 50th anniversary, and that program was a result of legislation. The way teachers are certified, like the CBEST, that was a bill introduced by Senator Gary Hart. And actually, Black Studies, Chancellor Dumke would have never initiated Black Studies without the motivation, the inspiration of individuals like Willie Brown, John Vasconcelos, Merv Dunn, and Gary Hart, to name a few. So there has been examples of that. Now, if we worry about social justice can be taught now throughout our curriculum. So we wouldn't have to add a new component. But if we wanted to teach our students about racism and institutional racism, who best to teach that than the experts? And that's the ethnic studies faculty.
Thank you. Trustee Kames.
Thank you. I just wanted to start off by saying that Trustee Eisen, Taylor, as well as Chair Campbell, I agree and I see where you're coming from, kind in like some areas of what you were saying. But I think for me, it's and what was really concerning is that it's not necessarily. It's more about what entails a proposal, or what's in the CSU proposal. And I know that, you know, like Trustee Taylor said, it's more of a futuristic outlook. But I think the fact that and I think you, Trustee Eisen, mentioned that it's an ethnic studies plus, and I think when it comes to that, you know, as it was answered earlier, you could go through the CSU and fulfill, you know, if the CSU's proposal were to become a requirement, and actually fulfill that requirement without necessarily taking an ethnic studies class. And so I think when even Trustee Fagan, when he started talking, he said that fundamentally we all agree that an ethnic studies requirement is important. And so I think the notion of an ethnic studies plus, when we're talking about a requirement that you could actually fulfill without necessarily taking an ethnic studies class, I'm not sure how to go about that. And so that's kind of something that I am really thinking about and considering. And I think in terms of timing and everything beyond that, I'm a champion of the CSU for the CSU, but as long as what we're actually looking at kind of actually or is actually proposing a just and authentic ethnic studies requirement. And as I mentioned in my earlier comment, I do agree that, you know, it should be, I guess, broader than those 4 different departments, but it should include other groups instead of, like I was saying, you know, different departments. And again, I just want to go back and comment that learning about the economics of poverty and discrimination is very different than learning about, you know, the history of African Americans from the perspective of Black people. And again, I do understand that this is more of a futuristic outlook. And in terms of timing, yes, it should be coming from us for our people. But at the same time, the proposal that, or I believe that the proposal that is at hand right now is not just to what our students, our staff, or faculty are asking for, and even our country's asking for right now in terms of ethnic studies and just being more educated and diverse people and employees in the future.
Thank you. We have 4 more people have raised their hands. Trustee Sebelius. Oh, Jean, you stepped off. Sebelius, Fagan, and then we will close with Chancellor White. So, Trustee Sebelius.
Okay, at this point, I don't want to speak to the content of the Title V change and the implications and the view of the faculty on it, but about a technicality. I would like to vote to bring this out of committee to the entire board, because we have many trustees that are not on the board who have taken a strong interest in this and who have commented. For example, Trustee Morales has spoken on it. Trustee Simon, as I can see, is listening intently. Trustee Taylor has spoken. Trustee McGrory has spoken. They're all not on this committee. And if we shut it down here, we deprive our fellow trustees from a vote on this one. I strongly urge this committee, the Educational Policy Committee, to move this discussion to the whole board in order to have the input of the entire board, because I think by now we have plenty of information, whether you sit on this committee or not. You had a lot of feedback from the public. You had probably constituents call you up or lobby you one way or another. And I think it would not be fair if we kept this discussion and a vote to this committee itself. And therefore I will vote against the motion of Trustee Abrego because I want this to move to the full board.
Thank you, Trustee Sebelius. Trustee Fagan.
I think a lot of us, maybe all of us, completely agree with Trustee Eisen and the others that academic issues, certainly the Academic Senate agrees, that these kinds of academic decisions should be made in the academic community. And there is a concern about legislative action to dictate what students should learn and not learn, politicizing that entire process. So that's completely legitimate as a concern. But that's the normative thought here that really is not realistic. Because when I was suggesting we wait to see what the legislature does, that was not suggesting that I was putting my trust, or sorry, not trust, but putting my thoughts with the legislature that they should make that decision. They should not. But if they are going to, and they apparently are, then that's the real world. And we can then deal with what the real world has brought us. That's my concern. Why not wait and see what the real world has done? If the governor signs that bill, then everything we're talking about here today needs to be at the very least reset into how we respond to those decisions in Sacramento. Possibly, we should be sending a message from the trustees to the governor or the legislature, although that seems too late, about that concern, about where academics' ideas should reside. Maybe that's what we should be doing right now, is to say, we have to make that decision. The Academic Senate has to make that decision. The faculty has to make that decision. So that's the concern. And by suggesting we wait, I am not in any way suggesting that that's saying, yeah, this is a great idea. Let's see if they pass it, and then we're all in.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Chair Kimbell and then to Chancellor White. Chair Kimbell.
I just simply wanted to say, Doug, I believe that if we don't vote to approve this proposal, essentially what we are doing is we are ceding to the legislature their right to create policy on what we teach. This in some ways is a protest against that. So I think if we don't, they go ahead and vote and pass, we will not have been heard. I mean, after the fact will be much more difficult.
Thank you. Chancellor White.
Well, my goodness. I thought we would just have a sort of a straightforward 10-minute conversation and move on to the next agenda item. Seems like everything that is in front of us these days, whether it's dealing with the importance of ethnic studies and social justice, but all of the issues that are allowing us to be a remarkable university. And I want to say I'm proud of this board. This sort of discussion often does not happen. With different points of view and different concerns. But at the end of the day, the Board of Trustees must lead. Must lead. Not react, but lead. I want to throw a few other things into our consideration. First off, it wasn't very many years ago, and Doug, you'll remember this, where undergraduate degrees had creeped up from 120 to 125 to 130 to 135 credits. That was soon as I was landing in this position 8 years ago, and the board rightly said, you know, what the heck's going on here? And we had, super seniors, 180. I mean, it was just, and so we went through a very strong process to get on the semester system to 120, to quarters 180, with few exceptions for some of the engineering issues and some of the performing arts issues, et cetera. And then there was a discussion after that to get general education down from a larger number down to 48. And that was a difficult set of executive orders that I signed to do that. But so we have had now a period of time to be reducing the overall number of credits to degree. But accreditation issues in the variety of disciplines that have accreditation also have a whole set of things. And so we can't go adding a 3 credit in ethnic studies and social justice and another 3 credits in something else. Otherwise, we're going to reverse that entire ecosystem, if you will, of how many credits and how much cost to the student and to the state should an undergraduate baccalaureate degree be. So that's one contextual thing that hasn't come up in today's discussion. And I wanted to speak to it because this is taking one of the areas that has 9 credits and moving it down to 6 to make room for this area F, which would be ethnic studies and social justice. I speak against Trustee Abrego's motion, and I speak for the motion in front of you for a variety of reasons. In many respects, many of you have articulated better than I will spend time now, but it is the issue of inclusivity. And when we constrain ourselves to a limited number of areas, we exclude those who also need attention. And we also then drive students away from those other areas because if they have a requirement in a narrow area, they're going to do that, check the box, and go on to their major in business administration. I want students to have a choice within the broad parameters that the trustees and the faculty establish as the curriculum of the California State University. And some will choose an ethnic studies course, and others may choose a Jewish studies course or an LGBTQ course because they wanted to learn more about how individuals in that community have been oppressed and how they can help make it better going forward. So student choice matters here to me. I'm a biologist, life sciences. Back in the day, there was biology and there was chemistry. And then as those disciplines matured, guess what happened? Biochemistry was born. Biology went from biology to then integrated biology and cell molecular biology, and now genetic biology. And so as you think about the maturation of disciplines in the academy, they change over time. They don't stay static. Ethnic studies has matured. It's deep, it's powerful, but it's more than what it used to be. And in today's moment, it's more important than what it used to be. So let's lead. Let's provide that national inspiration as we have done over and over and over again to have the courage to act. I think this issue of the government specifying a specific curricular area is extraordinarily dangerous and has never happened before in public higher education. Let's not cross that Rubicon. We just can't. And by delaying, we de facto give no choice to our progressive governor when that bill arrives on his desk. But our progressive governor understands not only the 4 ethnic groups, but he understands deeply the issues of the Jewish community because he and I talked a lot about that as we're having trouble on some of our campuses over the years. And goodness knows, he cares about the LGBTQ community when he was mayor. So we actually give the governor a nice choice by the Board of Trustees taking the action today. And I would like to have the governor have that choice because I respect him and I respect his California for all. CSU can simply and must also be for all. Thank you, Chair Fong.
Thank you, Chancellor. We have a motion by Trustee Abrego to postpone the main motion. And for the clarification of the Educational Policy Committee, with this motion, it will postpone indefinitely and effectively will kill this main motion. And also it will prevent the full board from voting on it as a main motion. So we have a motion and a second, saying that there are no more comments. Ms. Kiss, will you please take a roll call vote? For clarity, this again is only members of the Committee on Educational Policy may vote at the time. Again, trustees, please unmute your audio for the roll call vote.
Dr.
Thank you, Trustee Fong.
Fagan has his hands raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did not see that. Trustee Fagan.
Just a question. My thought was to just postpone this till the next board meeting, not to kill this thing outright at all. And so what you're saying is if we vote for this motion, it's gone forever and that's the end of it?
Board Secretary Jones, would you please clarify?
Sure. It's probably Trustee Abrego that we should be asking to clarify. It's not clear whether you phrase this as an amendment. It actually is a motion to postpone. You can either postpone to a date certain or you can postpone indefinitely. Either way, the statements from Chair Fong would be correct insofar as for the purposes of this meeting, it would kill the item and it would prevent the full board from addressing it tomorrow because it would not make it out of committee.
Let's say postpone until the next board meeting.
Which is in September. And with regard to the legislature, I understand that they're going to be addressing this when they are meeting. Is it tomorrow, July 22nd? Were they voting on this? Do we know?
The legislature is, I think, scheduled to come back in session July 27th. And I do believe Dr. Weber did state today that they would be taking it up to move it forward to the governor's office at that point.
So from what I understand is that unless we address this, it will just go straight to the governor's office without our input, without our proposal. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the governor would have to take an action before our next board meeting. And so that's the point that Lily made. By delaying this, it de facto takes away that option.
Thank you. So with Trustee Abrego's motion, he wishes to postpone it to the September board meeting. That was amended. Do we need a second to that?
Yes, you do.
All right. Do we have a second to the amended motion by Trustee Abrego?
I'll second it.
Second.
Can I just ask something?
Yes, please.
You know, this is a major policy issue for us. I mean, it's a big change in the curriculum, and I would just ask the committee to move this forward to the full Board of Trustees tomorrow. If you vote no on this, we don't get the courtesy of the non-members of actually considering this. And I think timing is important. And I would ask that the committee move, as a non-voting member, the committee move this to the full Board of Trustees tomorrow.
All right.
I would be happy to pull it from the consent agenda.
For today.
For tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yes, for tomorrow.
I thought if you vote no on this, it is not going to the full Board of Trustees tomorrow.
Correct.
That's why I'm asking that please consider that you allow this to go. Just move this to the full Board of Trustees for tomorrow's action.
Madam Chair, could we have our board secretary clarify what's in front of us now? We have a motion to pull it till the next board meeting.
Right.
I believe we're going to be voting on that first. If that passes, we're done.
Correct.
That fails, then the motion on the actual proposal that's in front of the Ed Policy Committee then comes up for a vote. And if that fails, and that passes, it comes to the full board tomorrow on consent agenda and can be pulled from consent agenda for further discussion. But I want Andy Jones to walk through it one more time. We're clear on the Robert's Rules of Procedure here, because this is, we only do this once every 40 years. We got to get it technically correct, right?
Thank you.
Happy to do so, Chancellor, though you did so perfectly just now. And there have been a lot of yeses and nos mentioned, and sometimes with a little bit of confusion. So let me clarify. The motion takes priority over the underlying motion, which is to approve this item. The pending motion is Trustee Abrego's motion to postpone consideration of this matter until the September Board of Trustees meeting. So if members of this committee vote yes on Trustee Abrego's motion and a majority of the members vote yes, then that will kill this item for this meeting. It will not go to the full board, and it can only come back in September after the legislature acts and the governor is forced to act. If the vote is by a majority no on Trustee Abrego's motion, then it will come back to the committee for a vote on the underlying motion itself, which is to approve the Title V change. If that passes by a majority, it will come back tomorrow in the plenary session, at which time there can be further discussion if someone decides to pull it from the consent agenda.
Thank you for clarification. Trustees Fagan and McGrory, I see your hands are still raised. Did you want to add any additional comment? No. Trustee Fagan?
Now that I've figured it out,
okay.
I certainly agree with Trustee McGrory, and that everyone should have a chance to talk about it. And therefore, even though I agree with Cy on a lot of this, and I hope he understands, I'm going to vote to get it to the full board tomorrow off consent.
Thank you. So the motion by Trustee Abrego is to postpone this vote to the September board meeting. We have a second by Trustee Kames. Ms. Kiss, will you please take the roll call vote of the Educational Policy Committee?
Thank you, Trustee Fong. Okay, again, this is a vote on Trustee Abrego's motion. Only committee members may vote. Trustee Abrego.
Yes.
Trustee Adamson.
Oh.
Trustee Carney.
No.
Trustee Eisen.
No.
Trustee Fagan.
No.
Trustee Farrar.
No.
Trustee Fong.
No.
Trustee Kames.
Yes.
Trustee Sebelius.
No.
Trustee Steinhauser.
No.
Trustee Campbell.
No.
Chancellor White.
No.
The motion fails.
Thank you. And also thank you very much for that remarkable discussion. I really appreciate all of that. So we have the main motion that is still on the table. It was a motion made by Trustee Steinhauser. It was seconded by Trustee Farrar. The motion is to approve the recommended amendments to Title V regarding ethnic studies and social justice, GE Breath. Do we have any comments or discussion on this?
No.
All right, seeing none. Ms. Kiss, will you please take the roll call vote? Again, it's only members of the Educational Policy Committee. Trustees, please unmute your audio for the roll call vote as Ms. Kiss calls your name.
Trustee Abrego.
No.
Trustee Adamson.
Yes.
Trustee Carney.
Yes.
Trustee Eisen.
Yes.
Trustee Fagan.
Yes.
Trustee Farrar.
Yes.
Trustee Fong.
Yes.
Trustee Kames.
No.
Trustee Sebelius.
Yes, to let the whole board decide.
Trustee Steinhauser,
Yes.
Trustee Campbell,
Yes.
Chancellor White.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you very much. The item is approved. Thank you so much, Educational Policy Committee. Chair Campbell, that concludes the Committee on Educational Policy.
Thank you, Trustee Fong. I think at this time, we should take a 10-minute break and all meet back here at, what time is it? Around 2 o'clock, a couple of minutes after 2. Thank you.
The Office of the Chancellor's live stream. Please adjust your audio accordingly. This is the California State University Office of the Chancellor's live stream. Please adjust your audio accordingly. This is the California State University Office of the Chancellor's live stream. Please adjust your audio accordingly.